Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. Welcome to May. I've got a dozen articles for you here this morning, and all of the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Western Journalism, and it says, Rex Tillerson calls on the UN to increase pressure on North Korea. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson on Friday called for a full-scale global effort to pressure North Korea into scrapping its aggressive plans for a nuclear arsenal. His comments came a day after he said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was not crazy. As President Trump said, there was absolutely a chance of a major conflict with North Korea. All options for responding to future provocations must remain on the table, Tillerson said during a special United Nations session called to discuss the North Korean crisis. Diplomatic and financial leverage or power will be backed up by willingness to counteract North Korean aggression with military action if necessary. Tillerson called for UN nations to live by their commitments regarding North Korea, to end or minimize diplomatic relations with the rogue nation, and impose new sanctions to increase North Korea's financial isolation. This new pressure campaign will be swiftly implemented and painful to North Korean interests, Tillerson said, but the catastrophic effects of a North Korean nuclear strike outweigh any economic benefits. We must be willing to face the hard truths and mark hard choices right now to prevent disastrous outcomes in the future. Business as usual is not an option. For too long, the international community has been reactive, Tillerson said. The more we bide our time, the sooner we will run out of it. On Thursday, Tillerson was asked by Fox News host Brett Baer whether Kim was unstable. All indications, Brett, by intelligence agencies, and there have been a number of independent psychologists who have done analysis as best they can, all indications are that he is not crazy, Tillerson said. He may be ruthless, he may be a murderer, he may be someone who in many respects we would say by our standards is irrational, but he is not insane. Trump was asked about the same subject and avoided giving a direct answer. He's 27 years old. His father dies, took over a regime. So say what you want, but that's not easy, especially at that age, Trump said to Rutgers. I'm not giving him credit or not giving him credit. I'm just saying that's a very hard thing to do. As to whether or not he's rational, I have no opinion on it. I hope he's rational. However, Trump said there's a chance that we could end up having a major conflict with North Korea. Absolutely. We'd love to solve things diplomatically, but it's very difficult, Trump added. Tillerson had also said Thursday that the U.S. is not out to overthrow Kim. You know, if you listen to North Korea, their reason for having nuclear weapons is they believe it is their only pathway to secure the ongoing existence of their regime, Tillerson said. We hope to convince them that you do not need these weapons to secure the existence of your regime. We do not seek a collapse of the regime. We do not seek an accelerated referendum of the peninsula. We seek a deneutralization of the Korean peninsula. The next article that I have for you, dailymail.co.uk. It up here on my screen. Inside Kim Jong-un's camps of death, former North Korean female guard reveals the horrors she saw in secret prisons where thousands face being starved, beaten, raped. Prison guard Lim Hae-jin has revealed what she saw at a North Korean camp. She was left so traumatized after what she witnessed. Lim, who 20 at the time, saw two brothers get beheaded in front of everyone, and still shivers at the memory of two brothers who managed to escape briefly from the massive concentration camp in the mountains of North Korea. 7 family members were killed on the spot in revenge. More prisoners were savagely beaten as collective punishment for the breakout. Guards and inmates were ordered to gather As the pair, their bodies battered from torture, were dragged back behind the barbed wire. They had been caught in China and returned to the repressive regime. The two brothers were beheaded in front of everyone, said Lim. They called everyone to watch as a warning not to flee. The other prisoners then had to throw stones at them. Left Lim, then 20, so traumatized that she could not eat for days. Yet it was just one of many terrible incidents that she saw during 7 years as a camp guard, including routine killings of political prisoners declared enemies of the state. One woman was stripped naked, then casually set on fire after annoying a guard during interrogation. They do not see them as human beings, just as animals, said Lim. Now Lim, who in prison herself after being caught trading in China, has spoken exclusively about her experiences, offering a unique insight into the horrors of North Korea's camps, holding an estimated 200,000 people. Her revelations come as tensions continue to rise on the Korean peninsula. U.S. President Donald Trump is pressing China to act over its cruel neighbor, with warnings of possible major conflict if the standoff over North Korea's attempts to develop nuclear weapons is not resolved through diplomacy. Lim is the first female guard to talk openly about her experiences. We were manipulated not to feel any sympathy for the prisoners, she said. Had committed terrible crimes. Now I know they were normal people, so I feel very guilty. Few have escaped these hidden hellholes, modeled on Stalin's gulags and compared to those run by the Nazis. Even children are incarcerated for life, along with parents and grandparents under the rules that under the rules that punish 3 generations for perceived dissidents. One defector told me that he was the only one of 5,000 children to escape his camp, which held close to 50,000 people. Many prisoners are stunned and deformed by hunger and back-breaking labor in freezing forests and deep mines. Former inmates told me of living in fear of constant beatings, of, of injured people dumped to die in the snow, of hundreds sealed beneath ground after mining accidents, of rotting corpses piled beside huts, of catching snakes to survive deadly starvation. And get it to scroll up a little bit. There we go. Satellite evidence suggests some of these barbaric units have grown since Kim Jong-un took over the family dictatorship 6 years ago, although their existence is denied. Camp 12, a fenced-off farm growing corn and peppers near the Chinese border, was where Lim first began working, age 17. Inmates included high-ranking officials who had fallen out of favor with the regime. Guards brought up in a system that defies the Kim dynasty were given brainwashing sessions twice a week and told not to see prisoners as humans. Even if a guard was driving and ran over a child, there would not be real punishment, she said. Most inmates at the 2 camps where she worked were women and children. If men were healthy, they would be sent to the mines where they were used as disposable labor. Many died. They were also made to psychologically suffer. One survivor told me of the frequent accidents in quarries and mines, and as exhausted inmates worked around the clock. On one occasion, 300 people lost their lives in a gas explosion. The guards just closed off the tunnel with others trapped inside to stop the fires and gas spreading. Hundreds are also alleged to have died hollowing out huge tunnels in Mount Montap, nuclear weapons, and then clearing the contaminated sites afterwards. Lim said male guards abused women in camps by having what they called affairs with them. It was basically rape because prisoners did not have the right to say no. If women became pregnant, they had to have abortions or were killed by lethal injection. And if pregnancy was too advanced, babies were beaten to death or burned alive. Camps have reward marriages in which model prisoners are given a mate selected by camp chiefs as incentive to work hard, kept apart. Prisoners work 7 days a week, are woken at 5 a.m. and spend up to 16 hours slaving away in fields and factories before evening re-education sessions at which they might be made to memorize official edicts. Failure means being kept awake all night. Inspections take place 3 times a day to check through 3 rings of barbed wire surrounding the camps, and anyone out of their dormitory at night is shot. Lim said even after death, prisoners were denied humanity. All the bodies were piled up to one side. There was no respect, no funeral process. After a week, the corpses would be burned. Wearing ragged ex-army uniforms and sandals made from tires, inmates suffer starvation, surviving on meager rations of corn and salt. Yet anyone caught taking food from fields or orchards face a lethal beating or being locked in an underground cell too small to stand in. When I arrived, it was like a scene from a horror movie, said Kang Chol Han, sent to Yodok concentration camp, aged 9, after his grandfather was accused of sedition. I once watched a film about Auschwitz, and I could relate so much to the situation. He was always hungry during a decade in the camp. Many inmates die from malnutrition in the first few months. We were never given protein, so we would catch snakes, rats, and even insects. Kang spoke of ceaseless fear during his incarceration, with beatings commonplace. Once he had to watch a group of people being hanged. Then guards made them throw stones at the dangling dead. They left the bodies so crows came and ate the flesh, he added. Almost all the inmates are locked up following arbitrary arrest, with many having no idea what crime they or their relatives have committed. Offenses have included leaving dust on a picture of the supreme leader, holding a religious service, and listening to foreign radio. Zheng Guang 3 years in Yodok after being arrested for alleged spying. He was so badly tortured, even before entry, he could only crawl on his hands and knees, having lost half his body weight after months held in stress positions. It was a living hell. All the people were suffering from malnutrition. They did not look like human beings, he said. Jung, age 54, said any sense of solidarity was crushed from prisoners ordered to inform on fellow inmates or face savage punishment. Once you show sympathy towards others, it will bite you back, he said. I saw a kid who looked so weak, I suggested he went to a special area for people in a bad situation. He told a guard I was beaten so badly with a thick stick I nearly died. The guard asked me who was I to make decisions for others. During winter, his 400-strong group worked in forests, but all too often the tired and hungry prisoners moved too slowly to avoid falling trees chopped down for lumber. The guards just laughed as people were crushed. The ground was frozen and work could not stop. Corpses were thrown in a big pile. Some were not dead. At night, when I went to the toilet, I heard their moaning. These injured people froze to death. This gruesome heap grew until the ground thawed in the spring. It was like a huge pile of garbage. They were all rotten, said Jung, who now smuggles films and human rights information back into the state that betrayed him so badly. He remains deeply traumatized despite defecting more than a decade ago. Noi Hong Chang, one of the most senior defectors this century, said all citizens are aware of the camps. This is a regime of fear. Everyone is so scared of what might happen. No, former head of the ruling party's youth wing, fled in 2014 after his close ally Kim Jong-un's uncle was killed by the new leader. During our discussion, he cried after revealing that his wife, children, and brothers were sent to a camp after his escape. And Moon Kuo, who worked as a guard in 4 different camps, said those who die are the lucky ones. This is modern-day slavery, torturing people over decades. For his first 3 years, brainwashed and believing the propaganda, On beat inmates and used them as targets for martial arts practice. bored and talked to a prisoner, suddenly discovering they were innocent people. He said some guards even enjoyed the torture. One day, his boss killed an elderly prisoner in a brick factory by smashing a metal bar on his head. He was never punished for this. Guards could even advance their ambitions through murder. One man dragged 2 men and 3 women to the fences, then shot them, claiming he'd caught them escaping. He was rewarded with admission to a top university. In atonement for past misdeeds, On now campaigns against these camps, including the one holding his mother and sister. I wish I did not know the details, but I know how they will be doing, he said sadly. 3 years ago, the United Nations condemned North Korea's camps as crimes against humanity and without parallel on the planet. Yet even now, there is no reliable footage from camps the size of cities. On worked at one that is 30 miles long and 25 miles wide. Their size is matched only by the cruelty, said Thor Halvorson of the Human Rights Foundation, which assists defectors. Not since the concentration camps of the Nazis and gulags of Stalin has humanity seen such a meticulously organized system to punish and dehumanize a population. Today, the middle-aged Lim survives in Seoul, just 35 miles but a world away from the despotic regime that held her in its rigid grip. She defected 15 years ago after a short spell in prison, deciding to flee when forced to parade naked before male guards. She fears the camps have become even worse since she left and is angry at the system she served once with such loyalty. I feel so betrayed by the leaders who lied to us, she said. We were told not to see these people as humans. Now I feel traumatized. Next article is off of Western Journalism. I'm waiting for it to come up on the screen. U.S. military deploys controversial missile defense system in South Korea. Announced Wednesday, the U.S. military installed key parts of a missile defense system into operational position following North Korea's live-fire artillery drill on Tuesday. The U.S. military's surprise decision to install the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System on a golf course in Sigonju, South Korea, drew angry reactions from local residents. A senior White House official said last week that South Korea's next president would have final say on whether or not to deploy the controversial missile defense system. North Korea's aggressive posturing forced the hands of the U.S. military to install the THAAD missile defense system with no warning just 2 weeks prior to the South Korean presidential election. Starting at midnight local time, more than 8,000 police officers and South Korean soldiers deployed the missile defense system, finishing shortly after 4 a.m. Local residents reportedly hurled plastic water bottles at the troops throughout the early morning deployment. A recent poll shows 56.6% of South Koreans oppose the deployment of U.S. missile defense systems. The American military is completely ignoring us, said Kim Chung-won, the organizer of the local protest against the THAAD deployment. We will continue to fight with all means. The spokesman for the frontrunner in South Korea's upcoming presidential election said the U.S. military's deployment of THAAD was very inappropriate. Kim Sung-ju, an honorary professor at Sungkwan University, I guess that's how it's pronounced, expressed concern that the move limits the diplomatic options for the next South Korean president. Everything happened when no one was prepared, Kim said. The deployment of THAAD will leave few diplomatic options for the next president. Kim expressed concern the installation will cause China to more aggressively support the North Korean regime. The biggest worry is that the THAAD deployment may push China back to North Korea, Kim said. I don't know how much the South Korean government knew about it beforehand, but its voice on North Korea issues has weakened and has been overlooked by the two powerful countries. The rising tensions in the Korean Peninsula have already led China to retaliate economically against South Korea with boycotts and travel bans. The Pentagon said the move is necessary in response to North Korea's unlawful weapons program. It plans to complete the THAAD deployment process in cooperation with South Korea's military as soon as possible. North Korea's unlawful weapons program represents a clear, grave threat to U.S. national security, the Pentagon told the Yonhap news agency. North Korea openly states that its ballistic missiles are intended to deliver nuclear weapons to strike cities in the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan. Now that the THAAD is deployed, it will be different for the next South Korean president to it will be difficult for the next South Korean president to change course, regardless of what he or she wants, said Lee Jun-han, a professor at Icheon National University. It will be difficult for the next president to reverse the decision because the deployment has already begun. Unless a majority of people want this, which is very unlikely, he said, what's clear is it is getting more difficult to predict the U.S. government's next move. The next article, headlines, it says, Agriculture Secretary says Trump won't fuck us. Oh my goodness. Try that again. Agriculture Secretary says Trump won't focus on deporting illegal farm workers. Oh my goodness. President Donald Trump won't focus on deporting farm workers, even if they are illegal, according to new Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue. Agriculture groups have expressed concern that Trump's immigration policy could cause food prices to rise and threaten the stability of farms. Perdue, who took office Tuesday, suggested the president is open to helping farmers protect their migrant labor force. During a speech at the Agricultural Business Council of Kansas City radio station KCUR reports, Trump understands that there are long-term immigrants, sometimes undocumented immigrants, laborers out here on the farms, many of them that are doing a great job contributing to the economy of the United States, Perdue said. That is not his focus, nor will that be my focus. Many food producers, oh my goodness gracious. My eyes see it, my tongue is going a whole different direction. Many food producers, particularly farmers and dairies, rely on foreign workers because they are typically more willing to do the difficult jobs for lower wages than U.S. nationals. 7 farm advocacy groups have warned that if Trump institutes his immigration policies and deports millions of illegal workers, farm expenses will jump and cause food prices to rise. Perdue said he hired former American Farm Bureau Foundation attorney to present a blueprint to Trump on how to identify immigrants who contribute to the country. I'm hoping she can provide the president and his administration a blueprint and a program of how we can separate and divide and understand who are the immigrants that are contributing to American society and contributing to putting that food on the table and the fiber that we need for clothes, Perdue said in his speech. Perdue successfully advocated farmers' interests to the president and reportedly influenced Trump's decision to renegotiate rather than withdraw from NAFTA. Perdue and other economic advisors showed the president how many jobs would be lost in states that voted Republican in 2016 election if the U.S. withdrew from NAFTA, the Wall Street Journal reports. Oh my goodness. Well, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? My goodness, yes, I make mistakes. I'm human. I mispronounce things, different directions. Hey, you know, this is real, folks. The next one's off of BizPac Review. It says, measles danger now real in U.S. Outbreak spreads after refugees choose Islamic rules for vaccines. A measles outbreak within the community of Somali refugees in Minnesota is quickly becoming a statewide issue. The health commissioner's office in Hennepin County reported that are now 30 cases of children who have been diagnosed with measles, with 28 of them being Somali refugees who have not received any vaccinations. In the last 4 days alone, there have been 10 reported cases of measles. The outbreak has spread into neighboring counties, suggesting that it may not be contained. 11 of the 30 children have been hospitalized. Doug Schultz, spokesman for the Minnesota Department of Health, told World Daily Net. Just last week, Chris Erisman, infectious disease division director at the Minnesota Health Department, said that the state's health laboratory is currently running tests on additional samples for measles, adding that she expects the case count to rise, which is exactly what has happened. Whenever you have an outbreak in unvaccinated kids, measles just has a field day, Erisman said. That is what is happening here. This outbreak is about unvaccinated children, not specific communities, Health Commissioner Ed Ellinger said in a statement. Unfortunately, the Minnesota Somali community has been targeted with misinformation about vaccine risk. We're partnering with Somali community leaders and healthcare providers to counteract that misinformation. In 2000, measles were declared eliminated inside the United States, but states are seeing an unusual increase in cases, which are typically linked to international travel and refugees migrating into the United States. Muslims practicing Islam also do not believe in vaccination, as reported by WorldNet Daily. Dr. Andrew Bostom, MD, an academic internist specializing in general internal medicine, who has also authored several books about the history of Islam and Muslim communities, often prove difficult to convince that vaccinations are appropriate for their children. The case against vaccination is first an Islamic one, he said, citing in a 2011 article by Dr. Majad Khatim, spokesman for the Islamic Medical Association in the United Kingdom. We are giving our innocent children haram, or forbidden, substances and harmful chemicals that destroy their natural immune system, causing disease, suffering, and death, Dr. Khatam wrote. President Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at halting immigration and refugee resettlement from 6 terror-ridden countries in the United States, including Somalia. But the order was blocked by federal district courts in Washington and Hawaii. Since 1990, more than 132,000 Somalis have migrated into the United States as refugees, with the largest community being located in Minneapolis. Somali refugees are heavily populated across the United States in places like San Diego, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Portland, Oregon, and Nashville, Tennessee. The Star Tribune reported one of the first measles cases detected in the current outbreak began at Children's Hospital and Clinics of Minnesota, where doctors initially thought a child was having a skin reaction to an antibiotic. Patsy Stitchfield, a nurse practitioner specializing in infectious disease at Children's Hospital. In 2015, 134,000 measles-related deaths were reported worldwide. The last death in the United States, where vaccination rates are generally high, was in 2015. An outbreak can be contained. It can be treated if the outbreak spreads to neighboring cities and states because those practicing Islam do not believe in vaccinations. An epidemic could easily begin to take hold in this country. Next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says Trump urged to nominate more than 100 federal judges now. President Donald Trump received President Trump received wide acclaim from his supporters for the selection and confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, but legal experts are urging Trump to make good selections soon for scores of vacancies on the lower federal courts. More than 3 months into his administration, Trump has sent just one nominee for special appeals court opening. There are 18 others to fill. He also has an opportunity to nominate more than 100 federal district court judges, but has yet to act. Judicial Crisis Network Chief Counsel and Policy Director Carrie Severnio told WND and Radio America, it is vital to get strong defenders of the Constitution on these courts as soon as possible. They're incredibly important, she said. All of these are lifetime seats on the federal courts. Remember, the Supreme Court takes less than 1% of the cases appeal to it every year. That means well upward of 99% of cases are decided at the lower courts. Severnio continued, many of those district court cases don't even end up, or don't, try to get that again. Many of these district court cases don't even get up to the appeal level or the appellate level. They might end there. So it is a huge, huge impact on American law. Severnio said Americans can just look to the Obama years to see how much impact a president can have on the judiciary. Normally, a two-term president can turn over 2/3 of the judiciary, she said. Barack Obama certainly did that. When he came into office, one out of the 13 Court of Appeals had a democratically nominated majority judges. When he left, 9 of 13 did. During the campaign, Trump rolled out a list of 21 possible choices for the Supreme Court vacancy. The list included Gorsuch. While Trump may not have a formal list of all these other vacancies, Severnio fully expects the same careful vetting to pick quality judges. Gorsuch has been one of the signature accomplishments of his first 100 days in office. I can't imagine why the president would want to diverge from an incredibly successful strategy so far, and frankly, some of the people on that list could be candidates, said Severnio, noting that District Judge Amul R. Thapar, who was on Trump's list, is now nominated to serve on the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. A big reason for Severnio's confidence in Trump's administration to get these picks right stems from what she observed in the Gorsuch process. Candidate Trump always said, I'm going to ask the smartest people and get all the experts. When it came to judges, boy, he really did, she said. He didn't come up with a list for the Supreme Court by himself. He knew the right people to ask, and I think they know the right people to ask for these spots as well. She said what they should be looking for is simple and should be familiar to Trump by now. You want someone who is going to be faithful to the text of the law, faithful to the original understanding of the Constitution, putting the law before one's political instinct on where they want the case to come out. Severnio explained, we want the people who are going to be the judges first. I think that's what we got with Gorsuch. I think it's going to be the same type of vetting process. With so many politically charged cases now coming before the courts, Severnio said it is vital to get judges whose character can withstand the firestorm. You don't know what the next issue is going to be. We couldn't have seen all these issues coming when people currently on the bench were nominated, she said. That's why it's so important to have a vetting process that doesn't just say, here's some topic. How do you feel about free speech? How do you feel about immigration or this or that? We don't need to know what their policy or policies or politics preference are in these things. You need someone who actually understands the judicial philosophy here, because that's what's going to help them get the next question down the road that we haven't even seen yet. Correct. But while Obama succeeded in steering the federal judiciary to the left, Severnio said Trump can have a huge impact in the opposite direction. A two-term president gets to replace 2/3 of the judges. Currently, our president is Donald Trump, and it looks like he's going to make some great picks for those slots, she said. Severnio said Trump's influence on the bench may actually be bigger. He may have more front-loaded opportunities than most presidents do, because this does seem like a very large number of vacancies, she said. There are a lot more, I think upward of half the federal appellate judges who are either retired or eligible to take senior status. So there could be many more coming. Next article is off of BizPac Review. FBI filing reveals grand jury investigated Hillary. Why is this information being released only now? Watch Today released new State Department documents, including a declaration from FBI Special Agent E.W. Priestap, the supervisor of the agency's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email activities, stating that the former Secretary of State was the subject of a grand jury investigation related to her BlackBerry email accounts. The declaration was produced in response to Judicial Watch's lawsuit seeking to force Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to take steps to recover emails of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and other U.S. Department of State employees. The lawsuit was originally filed against then Secretary of State John Kerry. The Trump State Department filing includes details of the agency's continuing refusal to refer the Clinton email issue to the to refer the Clinton email issue to the Justice Department as the law requires. In the filing, Priestap declares under penalty of perjury that the FBI obtained grand jury subpoenas related to the BlackBerry email accounts, which produced no responsive materials as the requested data was outside the retention time utilized by those providers. On April the 30th of 2015, Judicial Watch sued Kerry after the State Department failed to take action on a letter sent to Kerry notifying him of the unlawful removal of the Clinton emails and requesting that he initiate enforcement action pursuant to the Federal Records Act, including working through the Attorney General to recover the emails. After initially being dismissed by the District Court, Judicial Watch's lawsuit was revived on appeal by a decision of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit on December the 27th of 2016. While the State Department, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton conducted official government business using unsecured email server and email accounts, her top aides and advisors also used non-state gov or state.gov email accounts to conduct official business. Clinton left office February the 1st of 2013. The FBI convened a grand jury to investigate Hillary Clinton in 2016. Why is this information being released only now? Said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. And it is disturbing that the State Department, Justice Department, and the FBI are still trying to protect Hillary Clinton. President Trump needs to clean house at all these agencies. The next article is off of Conservative Tribune. It says, breaking. House committee seeks charges against IT firm used by Hillary Clinton. By the grace of God, Hillary Clinton is not our president. That doesn't mean, however, that the people around her won't be getting all the president's men treatment. According to Politico, the chairman of a major House committee is asking the Justice Department to pursue charges against Treve Sonzo, the CEO of Platte River Networks, for contempt of Congress. Platte River Networks was the firm tasked with maintaining Hillary's ill-starred email server that she ran out of Chappaqua, New York home. A letter from the House Science Committee, Chairman Representative Lamar Smith, says Suozzo failed to turn over the documents and information requested by the committee regarding what Smith euphemistically termed as her arrangement. The 15-page letter addressed to Attorney General Jeff Sessions is heavy on legalese, in the same way that Steven Seagal movie is heavy on plot holes. However, what is clear that Suozzo wasn't terribly interested in complying with federal subpoenas, which is generally considered, to use an arcane legal term, a big no-no. Failure to comply with failure to comply with duly issued subpoenas and obstruction of a congressional investigation will not be tolerated, wrote Smith, a Texas Republican. With new administration in place, I am hopeful that the Department of Justice will appropriately respond to the referral. We cannot allow companies with valuable information to stonewall us in our oversight efforts. Platte River did not immediately respond to Politico's request for comment, which is pretty understandable considering they didn't respond to federal subpoenas either, and last I checked, those are legally binding. The letter comes as congressional aides alleged Clinton personal attorney David Kendall had reviewed documents from two other firms who had done work on Clinton's server, Datto and Secnap. For some reason, this raised specter of collaboration. We don't know that Platte River definitely is coordinating with former Secretary Clinton, but certainly the other companies were. one aide told Politico. Platte River flatly refused to cooperate with our investigation through a series of letters and emails, another aide added. We believe they purposely misinterpreted the terms of our subpoena to then say they didn't have any responsive materials. It becomes pretty clear that the Trump administration isn't terribly interested in pursuing the lock her up route, for better or worse. However, that doesn't mean that Platte River's CEO shouldn't face trial if he obstructed the investigation, which Smith's letter alleges he did. Hillary may not be president, but the email server investigation shouldn't die with her chances at public office. Next article is off of Conservative Tribune. It says Trump to sign executive order to create new position for firing incompetent VA workers. Trump's campaign promises was to take care of American veterans. To follow through on that promise, the president will sign an executive order that will create a new office in the Department of Veterans Affairs that will discipline or fire incompetent employees as well as protect whistleblowers, according to the Washington-based news outlet Government Executive. Of accountability and whistleblower protection will discipline or terminate VA managers or employees who fail to carry out their duties in helping our veterans, a White House official told the publication, which focuses on covering federal departments and agencies. Other details regarding the office and who will staff it were not immediately known, but the official said it would allow VA Secretary David Sullivan to discipline or terminate VA managers or employees who fail to carry out their duties in helping our veterans. The Daily Caller reported that the president is set to sign the executive order on Thursday. Brendan Coleman, whistleblower who went public about serious problems at the Phoenix, Arizona VA in 2015, told the Daily Caller that he applauded the president for taking this step. I think we have a VA secretary in Dr. David Shulkin that wants to bring transparency to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and setting up a whistleblower division is a great way to bring whistleblowers to the table instead of trying to destroy our careers, as the VA has done time and time again over the past 3 years, Coleman said. Whistleblowers are the only ones, well, just to cooperate here. Whistleblowers are the only ones who have continued to tell the truth at great risk to our professional careers within the VA, he added. Advocacy group Concerned Veterans for America also praised the legislation. Dan Caldwell, the policy director for the Concerned Veterans for America, said in a statement that the office is a good start. This new office will only be effective if it is coupled with strong accountability legislation like the VA Accountability First Act, to speed up the termination process for bad employees. Identifying bad VA employees won't do any good if you still can't fire them, he said, reported the caller. As it is under existing VA rules, Shulkin must wait 30 days before firing even an employee whose behavior was grossly unacceptable, like watching porn while working with a patient. This brings new meaning to the words "you're fired," and you can bet there are some VA staffers who are sweating bullets because this new office. The next article I have for you is off of Western Journalism. Rex Tillerson seeking more than 2,000 job cuts at the State Department. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is taking the axe to State Department's $50 billion budget through job cuts that will presage a departmental reorganization. New reports say Tillerson wants to cut 2,300 staffers, which would amount to about 9% of the department's budget. The plan reportedly would cut 1,700 jobs through attrition, while 600 buyouts would be used to eliminate other existing positions. Bloomberg reported that one factor driving the cuts is Tillerson's displeasure with the high cost of housing and schooling for diplomats' families. Trump administration cuts at the State Department would reverse the expansion that took place there under the Obama administration. Overall, the State Department has about 75,000 employees. In an interview with NPR that aired on Friday, Tillerson said he intends to reorganize the department. What we really want to do is examine the process by which the men and women, career and foreign service people, the civil servants, our embassies, how they deliver on that mission, he said. We want to hear from them. We're just about to embark on a department-wide listening mission, he said. I look forward to hearing their ideas because I know there's going to be opportunities to allow them to be more effective. Now, out of that, we'll determine what the State Department looks like. In the interview, Tillerson said the State Department's mission is to provide the national security needs of American people and to advance America's economic interests around the world. I think the issue for us is how well we deliver on that mission through all of the various aspects of what the State Department does, from diplomacy to our assistance program to helping nations that are just emerging to deal with conflicts, he said. The upcoming budget cuts will happen while the State Department operates with about 200 vacancies in its top level staff, something Obama loyalists say is wrong. There is a crisis with North Korea now at a time neither state nor defense have the bench of senior leaders needed, and with state facing a massive budget cut, said Wendy R. Sherman, who helped former President Barack Obama negotiate the Iran nuclear deal. How do you execute a policy with the quality you need in that circumstance? R.C. Hammond, Tillerson's spokesman, said that the absence of political appointees does not mean that the work is not getting done. Career Foreign Service officers are operating very much at the varsity level, Hammond said. Hammond noted that Tillerson wants staffers with competence, not connections. It's the distinction between politics management and between political motivation and motivating people, Hammond said. Next article is off BizPac Review. Explosive internal documents tie violent Berkeley riot organizers to pedophilia group, NAMBLA. The violent leftists who rioted at the University of California at Berkeley to silence conservative viewpoints have ties to the pro-pedophilia group, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, known as NAMBLA. That's what investigative reporters at the Daily Caller discovered. According to explosive internal documents provided by a group of researchers, the militant leftist group BAMN, by any means necessary, worked directly with the North American Man-Boy Love Association. BAMN organized the recent wave of violent anti-conservative and anti-Trump riots at Berkeley. For years, NAMBLA held conferences promoting thinly disguised pedophilia, man-boy love, under the aegis of gay rights and sexual freedom. The organization's conference materials showed photos of naked young boys and detailed lurid accounts of sexual encounters between boys and older men. To promote their pro-pedophilia agenda, the NAMBLA adopted these proposals, Daily Caller reported. Abolish all age-based curfews. Children shall have right to divorce their parents. Children and youth must provide non-moralistic, explicit, sex-positive, including lesbian, gay, positive sex education that includes safe sex education. Condoms, latex barriers, and contraceptives in appropriate smaller sizes must be distributed in all schools. Even to the untrained eye, the rules championed by NAMBLA appear to be a little more than grooming tactics to lure young boys into homosexual lifestyles with older men. They also appear to rationalize and glorify the sexual exploitation of little boys. BAMN, which worked with NAMBLA, made headlines in February after masked thugs smashed windows, set fires, vandalized property, and assaulted students who went to see conservative writer Milo Yiannopoulos speak at UC Berkeley. It turns out that Jesse Arguin, the mayor of Berkeley, California, is a member of BAMN, by any means necessary. Yvette Felkera, a national organizer for BAMN, made no apologies for inciting violence against people she believes are fascist, which to her is all conservative whites. In September of 2016, school teacher Felkra was was briefed, placed on administrative leave, or well, gee whiz, let me try it again. In September of 2016, school teacher Felkra was briefly placed on administrative leave after a video surfaced of her physically attacking a young white male she claimed was a neo-Nazi. In the video, Felkra shoves the protester, punches him repeatedly in the stomach, and kicks him before a group of leftist thugs pummel and kick the protester. Radical anarchists like Yvette Felkra have cropped up all across the country, leading many to wonder what has to happen before the mainstream media and liberal politicians condemn their violent actions. Last week, Bannon forced conservative author Ann Coulter to cancel a speech at Berkeley amid death threats and concerns over violent riots. The nationwide campaign to silence conservative voices on college campuses continues unabated. And the final article I have for you this morning is off Conservative Tribune. It says, breaking, finally reveals truth on his death. We should have known. Anybody who has followed the explosive growth of alternative conservative media over the past decade should be familiar with the late Andrew Breitbart, who worked tirelessly to expose the lunacy and behind-the-scenes skullduggery of liberals and the political establishment. Those individuals would also likely be aware of the persistent conspiracy theory surrounding his untimely death of a heart attack in 2012, as some believe that he was secretly murdered for digging real truths. However, the Daily Caller just reported on impassioned statements from a personal friend and former colleague of Breitbart that should put a damper on that theory. If not end it altogether. Lee Stranahan, a journalist who used to work for Breitbart namesake website and recently resigned due to a feud with the site's Washington political editor, Matt Broyle, posted a video to Periscope Tuesday that mostly extricated Boyle for his coverage of President Donald Trump's White House, specifically of the first daughter and advisor Ivanka Trump, but also addressed the death of Breitbart after taking questions from his viewers. You want to know the truth about Andrew Breitbart's death? Stranahan asked about 18 minutes into the video. Andrew Breitbart was not murdered, but he worked himself to death. I want you to hear this. What Andrew Breitbart did was far worse and far more noble than just he was murdered, Stranahan continued. He believed in something so much that he worked himself 24/7, that he worked himself to the exclusion of almost everything else except his family. He was told by his doctor for a year before to slow down. So when people say he was murdered, you're not giving the man credit. He worked himself to death, Stranahan said. Ask yourself if you saw any signs that Andrew Breitbart slowed down in the last year of his life. When you go to the hospital for a heart condition, they tell you to slow down. He didn't slow down. That's a hero, he continued. Andrew went out doing what he loved doing. He went out on his own terms. Andrew told me 3 hours before he died that he felt a heart pang and felt he had taken so many arrows for people, which is true, that maybe what he felt in his heart was that, Stranahan said. Do you understand? Think about that. Think about who he took arrows for. I don't think he would have chosen to do anything different, he said. He died the way he lived, which was, we were talking about stories 3 hours before he died. I was supposed to call him back an hour after he died. I sent him a text message. I didn't know it. That was the movement when that was the moment when Stranahan specifically addressed those who have perpetrated the theory that Breitbart was murdered, letting them know in no certain terms how he felt about it. Bullshit stories about how Andrew Breitbart death, go F yourself, you dig? He said that he was killed with a heart attack gun. Andrew Breitbart was no victim. The reason Andrew died is he was taking arrows for people in the conservative movement. It infuriates me. This guy who did journalism the right way. Stranahan then turned his fury towards Boyle and other unnamed individuals at the Breitbart media outlet. claiming that Breitbart would never have hired them and that they were ruining the legacy he had worked and fought so hard to build. Unfortunately, conspiracy theorists will likely ignore what Stranahan said, but whether Breitbart was murdered or simply worked himself to death is ultimately less important than the greater truth. Andrew Breitbart was an indomitable spirit who did great things for the conservative movement, and media will be sorely missed as the fight for liberty endures. And that's all I have for you this morning. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. That way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.